Hello, I'm Marion Kenville, and I taught here from 56 to 77. And I was very involved in swimming, so I really enjoyed all of my years here. It was very, very nice, and I appreciate everything.
My name is Ron Lassard, and this truly is an honor. Some of the great memories that I have from Dondero is the ability to excel enough to be able to go to a school like Albion College to help me to further in my career.
My name is Tom Dorsey. Graduated here in 1948. But you know, your high schools are always in the back of your mind, no matter how old you get or where you go in life. It is quite an honor, and I really appreciate these people recognizing me for the part that I played here. And I've gone through a lot of trails between the time I left here. In fact, this is the first time I've been back in this building since I left here, since I graduated. And of course, I grew up in the neighborhood, and my family did too. But I think the memory that sticks the most in me is I lost my brother in the Second World War. And I was in this building when I found out. So it's not a good memory, but it's a lasting memory that never left me.
Well, I'm particularly pleased to be honored here because I was kind of an indifferent student at Royal Oak and didn't set the world on fire socially, and figured maybe everyone would regard me as best forgotten. So after all these years, to find out that thanks to David Smith and his persistence, I have been made a member of the Royal Oak High School Hall of Fame is a very great honor for me. I have very fond memories of the place, despite my poor performance as a student. An awful lot of the high school experience was very valuable to me. I have survived in a very difficult business that requires a lot of technical skills on my high school education. And I think that probably in the Royal Oak Public School system, I had the equivalent of a much, much better education than anybody would normally expect today, I think. That really, to accomplish what I've accomplished, starting now, I'd have to have at least a master's degree. I'd have to have all kinds of credentials. And as a graduate of Royal Oak High School, I walked out, got into an enormously competitive business, and succeeded. And I think that I really was very well educated here for a guy who didn't try very hard and didn't think when he left that he had carried very much away.
My name is Eugene Parker. I was a student here at Dondero High School from 1940 to 1944. So it's kind of been an old home returning here to come back and see the place. I would not have recognized it from here. I think I owe quite a debt of gratitude to the Dondero High School. I learned a lot here. I didn't realize that till I got off to college and found that I had already learned many things, and I had a long way to go. In particular, when I was here, I took a course in physics, and that's when I realized that I wanted to do physics for the rest of my life, and I've always been grateful for that.
We've been a Royal Oak family, and we've been lived in Royal Oak all our lives. Graduated from high school here, and other than the 4 years I went to the University of Michigan, this has been our home. 2 years in Milwaukee on a job transfer, but that was just a small interlude. So my 66 years, most of them have been here in Royal Oak, and we've enjoyed it. Our children have gone to Royal Oak schools, and they've gone on to college to do well there. We're proud of the Royal Oak school system. We think they do an excellent job. Matter of fact, I only live about 4 miles from where I was brought up. I started caddying at Red Run Golf Club when I was 8 years old in 1943. During the war, they needed kids to to fill the slots with the bigger kids who went on to grocery store jobs, because those kids went on to war. And so I got an early start, and it was made the difference in my life. Not only the chance that I could play and play competitively, which I did, played for the University of Michigan and also in 6 USGA championships. That's the fun part. The long-term part is the friendships I've made and the organizations I've been involved with. I think probably the best thing I did in golf was to be part of an interview team of interviewing over 1,200 caddy scholars who eventually got the scholarship and went on to the University of Michigan or Michigan State University to get an education. Those would be deserving kids who had a good work ethic, good high school grades, and a financial need. And over the last 40 years, I've been on that selection committee, and that's been, other than my family, which I think is the top shelf, that's been the most rewarding part of my life.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Dondero, I should say Royal Oak Dondero High School Hall of Fame Committee, I would like to welcome you to the 2001 induction ceremony. I'd also like to thank you for taking the time to come to this special event. I know the new inductees appreciate your support and will enjoy sharing this activity with you. And now I'd like to have you rise as the a cappella choir from Dondero High School, under the direction of Mr. Rick Hartsoe, will sing our alma mater. The alma mater, by the way, the blue and the white, was composed by a former faculty member, Bruce McGregor. And it should also be noted that the current director, Mr. Rick Hartsoe, was hired by one of our inductees, Bruce Feigner, to this position that he holds today. Mr. Hartsoe wants us all to remember that Bruce Feigner directed this choir for many years. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Royal Oak Dondero a cappella choir. Thank you, Mr. Hartsoe and the choir. It should be noted that that piece was written by a former faculty member here at Dondero, Bruce McGregor. Before I begin, I'd like to make sure that you're aware that two of your hosts are here in the audience. Our building principal, Dr. Gerald LeCoeur, is here, and the superintendent of our schools, Dr. Steve Gaynor, is also here today. We're here today to recognize 8 outstanding members of the Royal Oak Dondero High School community and to formally induct them into our Hall of Fame. Now, many high schools have Hall of Fames which honor students who excel in academics or in athletics while they are in school. But the Hall of Fame at Royal Oak Dondero is different. It's a unique purpose, and it has a unique criteria for selection. To be eligible for consideration, one must have attended Royal Oak or Dondero High School and graduated more than 10 years ago. Staff members of Dondero are also eligible if they worked in the building for at least 20 years and have been retired for at least 3. Nearly 75 years ago, the current building was constructed, and the motto, "Enter to learn, go forth to serve," was etched in stone over the main entrance. Royal Oak High School, now known as Dondero High School, is a quality educational institution. Students have always been able to enter these halls and learn. Each student has also been taught that the purpose of education is found in the service to others. It is in this spirit that the Royal Oak Dondero Hall of Fame recognizes some special students who have acquired an education, applied their knowledge to real situations, and made a positive contribution to their community. The lives of the members of the Dondero Hall of Fame truly reflect the values and mission of our school. They believed in the creed of service, which was identified in 1927. I'd like to have you sometime take a moment and look at your program and observe the varied achievements of some who have attended this school. You'll discover students who have excelled after graduation in a wide variety of endeavors. You will also find faculty members who motivated and nurtured these students and significantly contributed to the positive learning environment in this building. Their names are printed in your program. And I am pleased as I look out to see that there are several Hall of Fame members who returned today. And so at this time, I would like to ask, if you're a current member of the Hall of Fame and you're in attendance today, if you would please stand up so that we can again show our respect and our appreciation. It's always fun for me to watch these people interact because many of them were walking the halls here 30, 40, 50, or maybe even more years ago, and they still have very good, fond memories of each other and of this place. Our keynote address this year will be given by our first inductee, David E. Davis, Jr. David E. Davis, Jr. graduated from Royal Oak High School in 1949. While in high school, he participated in drama productions and served as president of our student council and of the High Y Club. David E. did not hone his talents in formal college classrooms. He chose rather to learn from firsthand experiences and life's encounters. He was recently described as a self-made character with encyclopedic knowledge and an unparalleled enthusiasm. His love for cars and adventure led him to California and sports car races. However, his racing career was cut short by a very serious accident. And although the accident significantly reduced his face, it did not diminish his mind nor his spirit. For the next 45 years, David E. Davis demonstrated his creative talents, his love for life, and his passion for all things automotive. He started in advertising with Road and Track magazine. He became the editor-publisher of Car and Driver magazine, and in August of 1985 launched his own publication, Automobile Magazine. He also spent extensive time as an executive and creative director with the advertising firm of Campbell Ewald. There, his work resulted in several Clios. These are national awards for excellence in advertising. And I forgot to ask him, was one of them hot dogs, apple pie, baseball, and Chevrolet? I didn't get that in order. Hot dogs, baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Is that right? That's right. Okay. See, I still remember it. Okay. David E. Davis was named one of the 5 most important automotive journalists of the 20th century. And he was recently given 2 Lifetime Achievement Awards, one by the International Automotive Media Conference and one by the International Motor Press Association. But don't let the awards fool you. His lifetime achievements are not yet complete. At the age of 70, he retired from his position at Automobile Magazine and began a new job. He is currently developing automotive materials on the internet for the Prime Media publishing conglomerate. David E. Davis is regarded as one of the best storytellers in America, and he is a celebrated speaker and writer. His knowledge of automobiles and his direct style have resulted in several invitations from national news programs. His TV appearances include Meet the Press, 60 Minutes, 2020, and The Larry King Show. His recent book, Thus Spake David E., contains many stories filled with wisdom, humor, and a passion for a life that's not to be squandered. We at Royal Oak Dondero High School are pleased to welcome to our stage David E. Davis, Jr., our keynote speaker and our first inductee of 2001 into the Hall of Fame. Mr. Davis.
Retrieve my notes. We got here an hour early today, so we went off and prowled the streets of Royal Oak, and my poor wife was subjected to one anonymous house after another being identified as that was where Jack O'Boyle lived, that was where Malcolm Aldrich lived, that was where Ronnie Howard lived. I took her by where the old Sinclair station used to be at the corner of Batavia and Lincoln. And I know there are people here who grew up in the Depression as I did, and the landmarks of the Depression were empty banks and empty gas stations. It seemed like every major intersection had at least one dead gas station on it. And my pal Ronnie Howard, who lived not far from the corner of Batavia and Lincoln, was fooling around the gas station there one afternoon, and in the house right next to the gas station was a family named Klipstein. And Mr. Klipstein had been gassed in World War I and spent all of his time sitting out on the porch looking at the world go by on the other side of a lilac hedge. The gas station and Ronnie Howard were also on the other side of the lilac hedge. And Ronnie levered the top off of the storage tank and dropped a lit book of matches in and created an explosion like nothing Mr. Klipstein had heard since World War I. And while he sat there on the porch wondering what the hell had happened, he saw Ronnie Howard rise up above the telephone wires, and Ronnie got all the way up, lost momentum, came back down, landed in the telephone wires, hung there for a moment, and then fell back into the crater he had created. And Mr. Klipstein, who was badly disabled, got off his porch, made his way across the lawn, around the end of the hedge, down into the hole where Ronnie is lying there covered with dirt, obviously dead. And he shakes him up, gets the dirt off his face, tries to figure out if he's alive. Ronnie opens his eyes and says, "Don't tell my mother." This is the caliber of people I went to Royal Oak High School with. Unforgettable characters I have met. I should start by thanking the committee for having me up here and offering me this wonderful honor. But I should, more importantly, thank David Smith, with whom I went to Royal Oak and whose persistence as a nominator got me up here, and I'm very much in his debt. David and I knew one another, but we were not terribly close in high school. But he became a reader of mine in various of these magazines that you heard about. And following my career, I decided that, well, maybe I should be nominated, which is evidence that he was not reading me too carefully. I could not be more pleased, I have to tell you. It is a very great honor for me, and it goes a very long way for making up for the fact that the narrow minds who ran this place in 1949 refused to let me into the National Honor Society merely because I had failed into the class I was graduating with. I failed algebra, plane geometry, and journalism. And and journalism is how I got up here. But that's not exactly true. The superior education that I got in the Royal Oak school system had an awful lot to do with the success that I've enjoyed. I did not have a successful college career. I only lasted one semester at Olivet and was kicked out for being a communist agitator. I had written a letter to the local newspaper urging faculty tenure for the Olivet faculty, and the president interpreted that as communist agitation and got rid of me. I still remember, sometimes word for word, lessons that I learned here and at Royal Oak Junior High School and at Whittier and Benjamin Franklin. I would sing the Benjamin Franklin song for you, but you would all leave the room. I'm on the board of a museum in Argentina dedicated to a great racing driver named Juan Manuel Fangio. And we travel to Argentina. We try to go down a minimum of every 2 years. And we also go to Uruguay to go bird hunting. And we have also spent a fair amount of time in Mexico. I manage in those places in my halting way based on the 2 years of Spanish that I got from Miss Andrews here in this building. And I must say I manage pretty well. When my wife is not there to interpret for me, I can actually carry on a conversation in Spanish, but I hide that fact whenever she's nearby. Despite my signal failure in Ruth Cowan's journalism class, I learned enough to have a pretty nice career running car magazines. Time magazine actually called me the Dean of America's Automotive Journalists, and I just hope that Ruth was still alive when they did that, because she had absolutely no use for me, and actually questioned the advisability of having me in high school at all. I vividly remember Miss Hoffman, who used to congratulate me about once a week, earning me the hatred of all the other guys in the class, because for some reason, I can't remember why, I used to wear neckties to school. And I was obviously the only kid in the entire high school who wore neckties. And Ms. Hoffman would point that fact out, and then I'd be challenged to a fight the minute I got out in the hall. Somebody had loaned me a Scripto pencil. I had never owned a Scripto pencil because we were poor. But a Scripto, as you recall, was a translucent pencil with a lead reservoir in there, and you could look through the plastic and see the lead inside, know how much you had left, and the lead was held in the reservoir by the eraser, which formed a stopper. And I was bored in Ms. Hoffman's class one day, and I was sticking the pencil up my nose, and the eraser came off and stayed in my nose. And I am unobtrusively trying to get the eraser out of my nose, kind of sitting there going, and it's not coming out. As a matter of fact, if anything, it seems to be going deeper into my cranium. And finally, I'm in a kind of a panic, and I'm working pretty hard to get the eraser out. And Ms. Hoffman spots me and wants to know what's the matter with me, and I explain that I have an eraser stuck in my nose. And she writes me a pass to go to the nurse, sends me out in the hall, and as I close the door, the eraser falls out. So I either have to go to the nurse and say I'm here because I used to have an eraser in my nose, or I have to go back inside and say I lied, I don't have an eraser in my nose. I went back in and was humiliated by Ms. Hoffman, who heretofore had always been pretty nice to me about the neckties, but the eraser did not earn me any applause. I think that between Royal Oak High School and my parents and my mother's sisters, who were a remarkable group of women, one of whom was a novelist, another of whom was a PhD who went to work for the Department of Agriculture. One was a librarian in the city of Cincinnati. These women kept me supplied with books, and I read a lot. My father was concerned that I might be gay because I spent so much time sitting around the living room reading when I should be out fighting with other guys or playing football or something of the kind. It wasn't until I started driving racing cars that he heaved a huge sigh of relief and decided there was hope for me after all. When my mother was ill in Kentucky during World War II, I was down there as a sort of runner going back and forth between my grandmother's house, which was way up on the side of a hill with no road, no electricity, no running water. And it's the house where I was born, actually. And my grandmother was providing the food and clean linen for the house in town where my mother was quarantined. And during that time, my dad and I read all of the Damon Runyon books. And I read all of the Thorne Smith books. And I don't know how many of you read the Thorne Smith books, but they were full of guys in tuxedos, usually guys about my age now, 71, pursuing half-naked young women through the halls of very expensive hotels, carrying trays of martinis or bottles of champagne. The Thorne Smith books became for me what the Boy Scout manual was for a lot of other guys, and had quite a marked effect on my life. I was very much afraid when I was at school here that I was uncool, and there was lots and lots of supporting evidence for that. I wasn't mistaken in that thing. So I had a paper out, and I saved money and bought the New Yorker and Esquire on a regular basis to make myself less uncool. And I have been a dedicated reader of the New Yorker ever since, and I feel like I owe it quite a lot. My higher education came the hard way, and I'm not kidding. You've already heard about some of my misadventures. In October of 1955, actually October 30th, the 46th anniversary was last week, I got a race car upside down at the old Sacramento County Fairgrounds, and it was the last year before roll bars became mandatory, so I had not bothered to put one in the car. And I got my head caught between the back of the seat and the pavement and slid along that way for quite a distance until I hit an obstacle on the other side of the road, flipped back up on the wheels, and I put my hands up to my face, and the visor on my helmet was hanging down the side, and I thought, this can't be good. And then I decided I would check my face, and the first thing I noticed when I put my hand up was that there was no nose. I had lost my nose, I had lost the eyelids on my left eye, the roof of my mouth, the bridge of my nose, and all but 12 of my teeth. But I had not lost consciousness. It took a team of plastic surgeons and dentists 18 months to fix my face, and I was really, really ugly. Once when I was walking on the beach during this period where I would go in for some sort of an operation, and then they'd send me home for a couple of weeks, and I'd go back in for another operation, they'd send me home. I was walking on the beach, and I got too close to some lady's kids, and she called the cops. Another time on the main street of our town, Manhattan Beach in Southern California, a passing driver was so startled by my appearance that he turned and looked at me and continued to look at me as he went through a four-way stop sign and T-boned a guy coming from the other direction. As a result, I stayed indoors for the best part of 18 months and allowed nobody but my very closest friends to visit me. And that year and a half, being alone with my thoughts, a year and a half of enforced introspection, really made a difference in my life and came as close to a university education as I ever got. I had come as close to death as you can be, and I had survived. And since I never lost consciousness until I was anesthetized some 4 or 5 hours later, I not only knew how close to death I was, but exactly how that felt. I knew when it was over that nothing in life, except maybe death itself, could kill me. No meeting would ever go that badly. No client would ever be that upset with me. No business error would ever bring me as close to the brink as I had already been. And with that knowledge, I was bulletproof. I could do anything, and if I failed, I failed. If I didn't fail, so much the better. I had no plan. I was simply going to take life as it came. I would live by my wits, and I would make sure that I always had a good time doing it. There is a terrific scene in the film Cat Ballou where Lee Marvin menaces a little wimp who really wants to be a bad guy and doesn't have the stuff. He's incapable of being a bad guy. But he's a pain, and he drives Marvin nuts. And finally Marvin, who is a real bad guy, grabs him and says something like, "I'm going to give you the greatest gift one man can give another. I'm going to give you true wisdom. I'm going to hit you so hard that you'll go through pain and come out the other side. You will never have to fear pain again." That's what I got from my two prep schools, which were Mercy Hospital in Sacramento and St. Joseph's Hospital in Santa Monica. With that knowledge, my education had begun. A student at a recent anti-war protest carried a placard that said, "Nothing is worth dying for." He was wrong. We're all going to die, and everything is worth dying for, and that's why we do it. I'm extremely fortunate. I survived that. I survived prostate cancer, and if there's anybody here even close to my age who has not had a PSA test, I tell you to go get one tomorrow, because it was a PSA test that saved my life. And I cannot tell you how important that this absolutely painless 5-minute procedure is. I love cars. I love magazines. And I get to do a magazine once a month about cars. It's a very nice arrangement. I've been doing it since 1957 with a little time out for the advertising business. When I saw myself after the accident, I was horrified, and I was pretty sure that I was not going to be a world champion racing driver after that, because number one, I was scared. And number two, I would never be known as the great profile, despite the fact they did a pretty nice job of replacing my nose. I wrote to all the car magazines that existed at that time and was hired by Road and Track magazine. I was offered a job at Motor Trend magazine tentatively, and I did a test assignment which they ran in the magazine, but they didn't hire me. As it happens, about a month ago, I became the editor-in-chief on a temporary basis of Motor Trend magazine, which leads me to believe that conceivably they found my application from 1956. At an age when a lot of guys are in the home or standing on street corners talking to mailboxes, I'm still hanging in there. I have a full-time job putting out a magazine in Los Angeles. I commute back and forth. I'm running up an awful lot of frequent flyer miles. And I would like to again say that I have had just a remarkably good life. I have had a wonderful time. My wife and I congratulate each other no less than weekly and probably daily on how much fun we've had, how much excitement we've had in our lives, all the wonderful places we've been to. And the start that I got here, the adventures I had here, the knowledge, the insight that I gained here, the teachers that I worked with, the things I was able to do. As president of Highway, I got to go to the United Nations when it first opened at Lake Success and Flushing Meadow. I remember every detail of that trip to this day, and it wouldn't have happened to me under any other circumstances. It happened here. In a funny way, everything that ever happened to me happened here, started here. And I just want to express my gratitude for being honored in this way, but more my gratitude for having been able to come here in the first place. And thank you very, very much. Wallet-sized evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I think I'd be a great motivational speaker for the student body at Dondero. Now let's take a little time and introduce you to the other inductees. Norman Barnard was born in a log house to a family of early settlers in Royal Oak. His father, Fred, by the way, was a classmate of George Dondero here in this school district. But the family moved to Troy. Since there was no high school in Troy, Norman Barnard had to commute to Royal Oak on the old interurban trolley. He graduated from Royal Oak High School in 1933. Mr. Barnard was known for his wealth of information and his love of history. He and his wife purchased 5 acres in the historic house of Johnson Niles, who was the first settler of Troy. The Barnards were instrumental in the creation of the Troy History Society and the maintenance of its museum. Although a highly educated man and a noted judge, Mr. Barnard often described himself as just a farmer. He and his children continued to raise sheep at his home, and he was active as a volunteer with the 4-H Club for 60 years. Norman Barnard was chairman of the Charter Commission, which created the city of Troy in 1955, which, by the way, spoiled the efforts of Royal Oak to annex the area. He served as the city's first city manager, and he helped the community consolidate its 9 school districts into one. In 1963, Norman Barnard was appointed to the bench of the Oakland County Probate Court, and he served there for 25 years. The Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court once described Judge Barnard as a true friend of youth. She specifically cited his contributions to the county youth assistance programs in which school districts worked with the court to handle youth neglect and delinquency cases. His humanitarian contributions were appreciated by his community. Norman Barnard was awarded the Distinguished Citizen Award by the City of Troy in 1970, and the Silver Beaver Award by the Detroit Area Boy Scout Council in 1971. The Distinguished Service Award was presented to him by the Michigan Probate Judges in 1975, and an elementary school in Troy, Michigan, was named in his honor in 1979. Judge Barnard passed away in 1998. Accepting for the Honorable Norman Barnard is his wife, Harriet. She, too, is an outstanding citizen of Troy, an active member of the Historical Society, and a leader among the 4-H clubs. Harriet. Thomas R. Dorsey is a graduate of Royal Oak High School in the class of 1948. Tom was a renowned student athlete. He won 10 varsity letters in high school and was recipient of the Morrison Trophy. He captained the football team, received state honors in basketball, tied for first in the regional high jump, but he excelled in baseball. The school yearbook described his baseball skills as including terrific power and aggressive play, and predicted that he would be the future catcher for the Detroit Tigers. And indeed, the Tigers did sign him and give him a bonus. And although Tom did have an outstanding minor league career with Detroit and later Philadelphia farm teams, his greatest achievements came from another field. He took the bonus that he received, and in 1949, he and his father purchased and established KD Farms in Howell, Michigan. There he bred and trained prize-winning thoroughbred horses. KD Farms became the largest thoroughbred breeding farm in the state of Michigan, and its clients included celebrities such as Elizabeth Arden and Rosemary Clooney. He also had a working agreement with the famed Calumet Farms. In 1968, Mr. Dorsey became interested and involved in a career as an executive, and he held positions of top executive positions with the Detroit Racecourse, the Wolverine Harness Raceway, and the Michigan Horseman Association. He later served as the Deputy Racing Commissioner for the state of Michigan. And he also held the position of Executive Director of the National Thoroughbred Trainers Association. Mr. Dorsey has twice been recipient of the Eclipse Award. This is an award named after a famous racehorse and sire, and is presented annually by the Thoroughbred Racing Association in recognition for outstanding contributions and achievements in thoroughbred horse racing. Please help me in congratulating Thomas R. Dorsey for his induction into the Royal Oak Dondero Hall of Fame. Our next inductee, G. Bruce Feigner, was the treasurer for the Royal Oak High School graduating class of 1938. Bruce was very active in high school. He was one of the top pitchers on the baseball team, a key member of the Glee Club and the high school quartet. He was a cast member in the senior play and several community operettas. He was also a member of the debate team, student council, and several clubs. After high school, Mr. Feigner graduated from Albion College as a music teacher. In 1942, he entered the Army, where he shared his teaching ability and his gift for music with military personnel in the United States and in the South Pacific. He returned in 1947 to pursue his master's degree and accept a teaching position with the Royal Oak Schools. His career with the school district would include an assignment to conduct the high school choir here, to coach the baseball team here. And by the way, he had a catcher named Dorsey one year that he coached. He advised the seniors. He coordinated the vocal music program for the entire district. His administrative duties included assistant principal here in this building, principal at Jane Addams Junior High, and 8 years as principal of Royal Oak Dondero High School. He retired in 1983 after 13 years as the principal of Grosse Pointe North High School. Bruce Feigner frequently took his talents into the community. He directed several adult singing groups, including the Elk Lodge Male Chorus, the Michigan Bell Telephone Company Choraleers, and the Royal Oak Choral Union. Even after retirement, G. Bruce Feigner could be seen directing singing groups in Birmingham, Berkeley, and other various affiliates of the Oakland County Community Association. Mr. G. Bruce Feigner, welcome back and congratulations on your induction into the Hall of Fame. You don't have to talk. You don't have to. You don't have to.
The guy says, you don't have to talk. If I get home tonight and I haven't said anything, my wife is going to say something. Now, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
But you won't like it. No, it's a different place to be. I've been up on this stage and from stage right, stage left, back there, pulling stuff in from off the trucks, and it's almost something that I can't even imagine. I can imagine that I was up here and when in that choir, in that quartet, in the, where else were you? You got
That's our next person. That's Mr. Rosario.
next person. Well, we can go lots of places.
That's okay, Bruce. That's okay, Bruce. Thank you.
I have now been ushered. I am now leaving stage left. Look at that.
Ronald B. Lassard is one of the youngest graduates to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. He graduated in 1978. Ron tried football, basketball, wrestling, track, cross country his first 2 years in high school. And I see some of his coaches out here, those sports that he didn't do as well in, but he did find himself in distant running. He set school records and earned state recognition in both cross country and track. He was awarded the Miles Marks Award here at Dondero for combining his academic and athletic excellence. Ronald Lassard continued his winning ways at Albion College, where he set college records in several different endurance events. He's currently a member of the Albion College Athletic Hall of Fame. Now, Ron is still running. He just returned from France recently, where he was in a very complicated adventure race. By his own estimates, he's run over 52,000 miles, which is equivalent, this old geography teacher figured out, to about 2.5 times around the Earth at the equator. Ronald Lassard's academic field is chemistry. He received his PhD in inorganic chemistry from Wayne State University and completed postdoctorate work at Michigan State. Dr. Lassard is currently employed by an international corporation which originally was part of the Nalco Energy Services. He lives in Sugar Land, Texas, and he is engaged in energy chemical research there. He serves as a research manager for a $70 million business unit. He's authored or co-authored articles in 16 scientific publications, and he holds 4 U.S. patents relating to new chemicals and the use of electronic equipment. Last year, his company received several awards in research and development, and Dr. Lassard was given the Suez Innovation Trophy for his contributions to the company. The committee is pleased to welcome Dr. Ronald Lassard into the Dondero Hall of Fame. Robert L. McMasters graduated with the class of 1952. In high school, he was manager of the basketball team and a member of the 1951 state championship golf team. He returned to the state golf tournament the following year and won medalist honors as an individual. He captained the golf team at the University of Michigan and was awarded all Big Ten honors there. He's won club championships across the street at Red Run and twice was a medalist champion for the Michigan Amateur. Mr. McMasters played in numerous USGA events, and in 1960 reached the semifinals of the USGA Public Links Championship. Robert McMasters has lived by the motto, if it's to be, it's up to me. He's a local businessman who has volunteered his time and talent for many worthy causes. He's been active as a volunteer with the Boy Scouts, his church, and several other community service organizations. Mr. McMasters has been an officer of the Golf Association of Michigan since 1981 and recently served as governor and president of that organization. While an officer, he helped create the Michigan Golf Hall of Fame and established a charitable trust for the association's benevolence. Robert McMasters has been a director of the Western Golf Association since 1982, and he's the only Michigan resident to serve as president of that organization. He has served as a volunteer with that association since 1958 and has actively participated in the raising of funds and the awarding of over 900 Evans scholarships to former caddies who wish to go to college. He also was instrumental in procuring the $1.3 million that was necessary to establish the Evans Scholar Home on the campus at Michigan State University. For his achievement in the world of golf and his tireless efforts in the area of community service and charitable fundraising, the committee is very pleased to welcome Robert McMasters into the Royal Oak Dondero Hall of Fame. Eugene N. Parker graduated from Royal Oak High School in 1944. Gene was vice president of the Spanish Club, and the Oak Yearbook prophesied that he would become a professor of Spanish. Now, although he didn't exactly fulfill his prophecy, he did become a professor And he was nominated for this induction today by that Spanish teacher you heard mentioned earlier, our keynote speaker, Elizabeth Andrews Tessum, who's seated here today to see that Eugene gets it right. In her nomination, Mrs. Tessman said that she knew Eugene really loved science more than Spanish, and that he would go far. Go far indeed. Dr. Parker is internationally acclaimed for his work in physics and astronomy. And in 1980, the California Institute of Technology formally recognized him as its Distinguished Alumnus Award. Much of his career has been a faculty member at the Fermi Institute at the University of Chicago. It was there in 1958 that Eugene Parker developed his theory of the solar wind. His idea that there was a vigorous, dense, and dynamically complex outflow from the solar corona, I knew I'd, you know, the sun, the center of the sun. It first drew skepticism and criticism from the scientific community. But future space travel confirmed his theory. And today, Dr. Parker is recognized as one of the most influential architects of the exploration of interplanetary space. His books have educated generations of investigators on the effects of magnetic fields of planets, stars, and galaxies on X-ray emissions. Eugene Parker has won numerous awards for his research, his teaching, and his publications. Here are but a few. The American Geophysical Union recognized him in 1968 for his original research and technical leadership. And in 1990, the organization gave him an award for his outstanding contributions to geophysics and, more importantly, his unselfish cooperation in research. In 1989, the President of the United States awarded him the National Medal of Science for his outstanding contributions to science knowledge. Dr. Eugene Parker is still sharing his knowledge and trying to stimulate the thinking of scientists. And I might note, in a language that people can understand. I actually read part of this article the other day, and an old social studies teacher could understand that it was trying to get the scientists to think outside of the box. He said the sun poses new challenges when applying the traditional laws and measurements of physics which were developed here on Earth. Accepting the plaque commemorating his induction into the Royal Oak Dondero Hall of Fame is Dr. Eugene Parker. Marian L. Kenville is a native of the New England area, and I love to hear her talk, by the way. She graduated from Boston University and served as a college and YWCA instructor before joining the Royal Oak Schools. She retired from Dondero in 1977 with the highest respect of her students and colleagues. Marian Kenville provided instruction and leadership in the area of physical education, and she worked a special magic in the swimming pool. For many years, her synchronized swim shows were one of the highlights of the year at Dondero. The shows ran for several evenings and always had a theatrical theme. It might be a set of nursery rhymes, or a Broadway shows, or movies, or TV shows, or the story of the wheel, from Cave Dweller to Motown. One year, the theme was Anything Goes. This was pretty clever because it provided her an opportunity to have in one show Alice in Wonderland, Grecian goddesses, Martians, matadors, gypsies, witches, and can-can dancers. Now, these themes enable the students to create scripts and comic routines, select music, plan elaborate swimming and diving displays, and design elaborate costumes, which always ended up getting wet. A cast of 40 students was not uncommon, and they included both male and female performers. Several of her synchronized swimming graduates performed professionally after high school. Mrs. Kenville also sponsored the Girls Athletic Association events at Dondero, coached the girls' speed swimming teams, and was one of the faculty members who helped the district implement its Title IX program. Marian was also given much to the community. For many years during and after her career at Dondero, she taught water safety, aerobics, and physical conditioning to adults. She can still be seen providing volunteer time with senior citizens in the area. Marian Kenville served 20 years on the board of directors of the Oakland YWCA and was featured in a newspaper article when, at the age of 60, she swam over 400 laps of the Kimball Pool to raise money for wise projects. Recently, the American Red Cross presented her with an award for her 50 years of volunteer activities as a water safety instructor. One can see why Dondero students are encouraged to go forth and serve when they have role models like Marion Kenville. Today's inductions brings the total number of famers to 56. 49 were students at either Royal Oak High School or Dondero. 5 of these students returned to the school and served as educators in the building. By my count, I think 7 members of the Hall of Fame graduated from other high schools, but were members of the faculty. And although not students here, these 7 individuals combined for over 200 years of professional leadership, quality, instruction, and compassionate service in this building. While the members of the Hall of Fame differ in their year of graduation and their specific occupation and area of excellence, when we examine the lives of the members of the Dondero Hall of Fame, we observe a common set of characteristics which link them all together. Each has a unique skill and talent. Each developed those skills and talents while in attendance here at Dondero or at Royal Oak High School. Each cares about people, and importantly, each has demonstrated a spirit of sharing that talent and serving others. It is this combination of talent, motivation, achievement, and service which the Hall of Fame recognizes. Each member of the Royal Oak Dondero Hall of Fame has lived the mission of the school. Each has indeed learned and served. Let's give one more round of applause for our new inductees. The new inductees and or their representatives will be honored with a reception in the student common areas immediately following the ceremony. I know all of you will want to meet them and view their pictures, which are now on display on the Wall of Fame. I would like to personally thank Megan Solinsky, who is the current student Senate President here at Dondero and reigning homecoming queen, I might add, for helping me with the presentation. And you will note a lot of her fellow senators throughout the building. These students remind us that the spirit of service still exists at Dondero. We also owe a thank you for many other individuals. The Royal Oak Foundation for Public Education made a significant financial contribution to underwrite our expenses. The Planning Committee spent many hours of volunteer time, and you can recognize the members of the Hall of Fame committee by their name tags and their green ribbons. Current student Julie Patra prepared the program. Alum George Boyd and staff member Caroline Callhill served us with their special talents in preparation of the event. And we also appreciate Mr. Rick Hartzel and the Dondero A Cappella Choir, and Mr. Bill Mikovich and the Dondero String Quartet, which will be performing for you during the reception. Finally, I want to point out that the election of the Hall of Fame requires an initiative of others. You heard Mr. Davis thank his nominator. You heard about Mrs. Tesson's persistence in nomination. You have to get to do some reflective thinking and take some action. We urge you to consider the criteria and nominate someone worthy of induction. Graduates, at your next reunion, reflect on who in your class deserves nomination. Reflect also on the teachers who contributed to your success. Members of the community, pause and reflect on the leaders at your work, church, service club, or community activity. Think of those who are giving of their time and talent and make life better for you and your neighbors. Find out if they have a link with Dondero or Royal Oak High School, and if so, nominate them. It's a great way to say thank you. Nomination forms are available in the Commons area following the ceremony and at the high school office. They can be sent to the committee anytime during the next year and a half. Our next scheduled event is the fall of 2003. Funding for the Hall of Fame expenses comes from donations and from the sale of the Janet Anderson lithograph of the school building. Purchase of lithographs can be made today at the table with Jerry Steiner down in the Commons area or during the school year through Jan Nelson, our principal secretary. Remember to join us in the student commons area after the closing song by the choir. There we will reminisce, enjoy some refreshments, meet and congratulate the new inductees, and view the pictures on the Wall of Fame. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to close our ceremony, the a cappella choir from Dondero High School under the direction of Mr. Rick Hartso.